This episode of Wheat Pete's Word is brought to you by Syngenta. Get the job done right the first time with Axial Max Cereal Herbicide Co-Pack for post-emergence grass and broadleaf weed control in Western Canada. New for 2025, Axial Max lets you manage resistance in your spring wheat and barley for cleaner, more productive fields. Visit syngenta.ca for more.
Good day and welcome to Wheat Pete's Word here on Real Agriculture for Wednesday, June the 4th. On this episode of the Word, wild weather all over the place. Oh my gosh. Hey, be safe. Rural roads, man, we have to be safe. And then agronomy answers. We've got soybean stands, we've got weed control, we've got tissue tests, we've got more, but Pete'll never get to it. Let's go. Yes, man, the weather is just so all over the place. We've got drought in northern Saskatchewan. Not only smoke, but we'll talk about that as well. But we've got drought in northern Saskatchewan. The agricultural area in northern Saskatchewan, 2.5 millimeters of rainfall from the beginning of April till I believe it was May 27th when I saw that report. And you just go, yeesh, 1/10. That's not much rainfall. That's not enough rainfall, particularly in a dry area. Dwayne out of Montana also saying that they're in a drought there. The UK is extremely dry. Meanwhile, we're swimming in Kentucky. If you can imagine, Phil Needham says that in Kentucky, some areas since January the 1st have gotten 55 inches of rainfall. Their normal annual precipitation is 37 inches. That's unbelievable. They are a year and a half worth of rainfall, and we're 5 months in. If Mother Nature's going to average this one out, boy, it's going to get fiercely dry in Kentucky. I hope that doesn't happen, but wow, that is a ton of rainfall. Meanwhile, nothing planted. Some growers in Quebec, some growers out in the Maritimes as well. It's been extremely wet through that area, so nothing planted there. And it's just one of those tough springs. As much as we've struggled in areas of Ontario, and we'll get to that, poor soybean stands, lots of stuff going on, man, it could be worse. There are areas that just make our problems seem small by comparison, although when you're in that problem, it definitely doesn't seem small. On that note, just an awesome tweet from Wanstead Co-op, and they basically said, rain holding you out of the field, use that time to make your Wheat Pete 15. And man, that was just awesome. So, a quick note. If you know somebody in Quebec, you know somebody in the Maritimes, give them a call. Take the time. Use your Wheat Pete 15 because that call will let them know you care. And there's always things happening in the countryside that you just are astounded at. Some growers are not in good shape. Mark Davis saying that he has 1,200 acres of crops still to plant as of June the 2nd. Meanwhile, he's got corn, I think he said, at 5 leaf. He's got soybeans at 2nd trifoliate. So a massive differential there. Everybody's mental health matters, and the amount that it will pick you up if you get a call from somebody out of the blue, just checking in to make sure you're okay, is really, really incredible. So pick up the phone, make that call. I haven't hit that for a while. I think it's time. And while we're on that whole thought process, man, safety. Oh, there's just been so many accidents happen on country roads in the last month. We just need to make sure that as agriculturalists, as farmers, we are not adding to that. So chains on equipment, lights, make sure if you're creating a lot of dust and it's blowing across the highway, I've had that experience 3 or 4 times, try to find a spot to pull off, to let people pass. They'll do stupid things, and we can't control that, and I know it's incredibly frustrating, and people just get, I don't know, because of the stupidity of other drivers, we farmers get really frustrated and sometimes don't back up a step and say, no, They control what they do, we control what we do, and we need to be as safe as we possibly can. So think twice, act once, be safe. If you are making that dust storm, and it can't be helped sometimes, but at least then try to get off and let people pass. It only takes a minute or less to let those people pass. So as much as you might be in the right, still carrying on, it's just common courtesy, and it might well save a life. Okay, on more upbeat things. Man, I got such a great picture from Kathy. Kathy and Tom are in Santorini, or were in Santorini, Greece on vacation. And Kathy took a picture of them standing on their balcony, looking out over the ocean in Greece, Santorini, and there on the phone was Wheat Pete's word. Those are such great pick-me-ups. I really, really appreciate that. And so anybody that's out there doing that, those emails, texts, tweets, whatever, they're just awesome. Thank you. Hey, before I move on, I do want to mention, I did talk briefly at the start about smoke in the prairies, and there's tons of smoke out there, so be safe from that perspective. But there is some question around how does that impact crop growth? How does that impact herbicide efficacy? And Lindsay and I did some segments on that on Agronomy Monday on Real Ag Radio, so we'll link those in the post. Bottom line, smoke at this time is not a huge impact, mostly speaking, on the yield potential of the crop. It could affect herbicides that require sunlight for really good efficacy. So things like Aragon in the West, I think they call it Heat, or Liberty, those types of herbicides. But it's unlikely to have a big impact, and you still got to spray them. So in any case, we'll link that. The smoke is an issue, but hopefully we get that under control. And before we get to the really critical stage of growth with the different crops, the smoke will be under control. All right, I want to move on and just quickly talk about stripe rust. I'm tired of talking about stripe rust, but I will tell you, from St. Thomas to Goderich, there is way more stripe rust than we ever should have had, and it is just causing real problems. We'll talk about it more this winter. What's interesting about stripe rust is that in the UK, they now have stripe rust that has become resistant to one of the wheat genes that gives us resistance in the wheat crop, the YR15 gene. It's not here yet, but boy, that's another level that we'll have to deal with perhaps down the road. The other thing I never did say, I think in all my podcasts, how do you tell if it's stripe rust? And Alan sent me a picture this morning and said, is this stripe rust? And I said, wow, I haven't. If you take your thumb and you rub it over the stripe rust, and you look at your thumb, and your thumb is now yellow from the spores of the stripe rust, that's stripe rust. If you see yellowing on the leaf, and you rub your finger on it, and there's nothing on your thumb, you do not have stripe rust. One last quick note on stripe rust. A grower did say, I'm north of London, just terrible stripe rust. We've sprayed it now, but I've got all these yellow spots in the field. Could I spray a foliar nutrient on there, or something foliar, a biological, to help the crop recover from the stripe rust? I only wish. Man, that would be a biological that we'd just all be utilizing. No, you've just lost photosynthetic area. That's the bottom line. And there's nothing, no nutrient, no biological that is going to bring that photosynthetic area back. It's costing yield, there's no question. The upside is that the stem and the awns, the glooms on your wheat crop are still going to photosynthesize. They're going to compensate for the loss of that leaf tissue, but it's still going to hurt yield, and there is nothing you can do about it now, unfortunately. Okay, a couple of other quick notes. My son Jeremy saying, hey Dad, aphids in wheat. And so yes, there are high aphid numbers in some of the wheat crop. I talked about the highest ever aphid numbers down at Harrow, but Joanna Fallings, the cereal specialist with the OMAFA, also saying that she has some fields that are close to threshold. So get out there and scout. We're starting to see cereal leaf beetle in the wheat crop. Nothing is at threshold yet that I have seen. And I've seen tons of ladybugs, baby. And so this is a good thing from a general controlling aphids in other crops. If the ladybugs and the predators that feed on aphids can build up in the wheat crop, then as the wheat crop matures, they move into the soybean crop, they move into the corn crop, and they keep those pests under control for us in the other crops. Having said that, if you get to threshold, you have to spray. So before heading, it is 15 aphids per stem. After heading, it is 50 aphids per head. So just scout. It's one of those things we have to continue to do. From Johanna Lindeboom down in the Niagara Peninsula, they are finding pretty significant levels of alfalfa weevil. If you're not cutting, if you're a beef producer that is going to, or you're waiting to make horse hay and it's got to be more mature, you're not going to harvest for the next 7 to 10 days. Get out there and scout. If you have heavy alfalfa pressure, man, controlling those alfalfa weevil is incredibly important. Last, before I get into the whole soybean side of things, man, did you notice that this year in Ontario, it's been just a tad cooler than normal? The West actually was super hot to start with. We had some warm temperatures in late April, but May... Nature Nut Nick saying that May was 10% cooler than the long-term average. 400 crop heat units versus 452, I think, were the numbers. Yeah. What does that do to nitrogen and maybe sulfur? So interesting that we planted early soybeans. We have lots of growers who have put some sulfur on those soybeans to see if we could get response. That's cool. But from a corn perspective, and nitrogen rates on corn, you would look at May and say, boy, we have not released much nitrogen out of the organic matter. Remember that we can't make that up, that the bugs only go so fast, and if they start in May, we gain that. If they start in April, they have, once they even started in March, I think 2012, they started in March. And so we got a couple of extra months of release. You start on 1st of June or 2nd of June, because that's when it looks like it's warmed up here. You don't get that early release. So pre-hydrate nitrate test is going to be very, very important for predicting the right nitrogen rate. And you would just guess, and this is totally a guess, with no data yet in to support it, you would guess that we might need a little extra nitrogen on the corn crop this year just because we're probably going to get less out of the organic matter. Okay, let's move on. Early soybeans. Man, yes, so Horst Bonner, the soybean specialist, just saying there are a ton of very questionable soybean stands out there. It's been so cold. They've been so slow to come up. There is seed corn maggot in a lot of soybean stands, some at levels that are just actually wiping stands out to the point where we do need to replant them. So Rob from Dashwood saying, okay, Pete, 7.5-inch soybeans, what size of hula hoop do I need? Because that's how we assess the stand, right? We take a hula hoop and we throw it, so it's random. It lands. We go and we count the soybean plants inside the hula hoop. He says, I'm in 7.5-inch rows. How many plants and what size hula hoop? So if you're in 7.5-inch rows, the best sized hula hoop is probably a 30-inch, because it would catch 4 rows, and it's sort of equal to your row spacing. So 30-inch would be best, but any hula hoop will do, by the way. In a 30-inch hula hoop, 10 plants would equal a stand of 90,000 plants. That's sort of the minimum stand. This early, you know, maybe on heavy clay, it's not enough for sure. I know some growers that say 90,000 were replanting, and fair enough, that's your decision, but that's sort of the minimum, and a 30-inch hula hoop would work. We're going to put in the post the chart from, I believe, Iowa State that gives you the diameter of the hula hoop and the plant count and what that relates to in terms of final stand. So that will be available in the post. One last quick note. Man, if you're in there replanting, you made that decision, you have too much seed corn maggot, they've taken out a lot of the stand, then if you are using a drill on 7.5-inch rows, best to plant on an angle. I was in a field on Monday. They were replanting. There was lots of seed corn maggot. It was a very questionable stand. And the problem with that was there was 90,000 plants established, but a number of the plants that established still had seed corn maggot feeding in the stem. So you go, okay, we have to replant. The upside is that the seed corn maggot life cycle is done, so they're not going to hurt us anymore. But it was a coulter drill on 7.5-inch spacings. They'd planted the soybeans on 15s, but on this particular drill, you can't lift one gang. So there are coulters running every 7.5-inch spacing. They were running with the rows. Man, the drill just finds the path of least resistance, and that's where the soybeans are planted, and the tillage coulters were just decimating that stand. In that situation, go on the angle. If you're in 15-inch rows with a planter, just plant between the 15-inch rows. If you're using a John Deere drill with a gang locked up, just plant in between the rows. But man, if you're using 7.5-inch spacing into 7.5-inch spacing, go on an angle when you replant. Okay, let's move on. Tony saying, Pete, this is a bit in retrospect because it's warm now. But last week, it was cold. And in fact, May was cold. And my corn was up and I had weeds. And I went and I sprayed the weeds. And a lot of my neighbors said, oh, Tony, no. The corn is stressed. Do not spray it. What's the answer so I know for the future? So, Tony, I really think it comes down to what herbicide are you using? So there are some herbicides that are incredibly safe, and Tony said he was using Acuron. Incredibly good crop tolerance, excellent crop tolerance from the corn crop. So it's a safe herbicide. Next question, how many weeds do you have? If you have a carpet of weeds, I guarantee you that the yield loss due to the weed interference is way greater than any yield loss you're going to take from a bit of phytotoxicity of the herbicide on the corn plant. So get out there and spray. If you only have the odd weed, maybe you can afford to wait. But the other part is, if you could have sprayed on the 20th of May, but you said, it's cold, I'm going to wait for warm weather. Dang, warm weather didn't happen until June the 2nd, and there's rain that can come in between. My first bet is, unless it's incredibly cold, like -4 or something silly like that, most of the time, your best answer is to get out there and spray. There's a few hot herbicides that maybe you might not do that with, but for the majority of herbicides, get the weeds dead. Just like the same thing with Dwayne and dry weather. So Dwayne in Montana said, Peter, man, it's just been so dry here. We have weeds. The pressure's lower than normal, but we have weeds. I haven't been spraying because it's been so dry and the crop is stressed. Oh, Dwayne, it stays dry. All that happens is the weeds continue to harden off, and become harder and harder to kill. When you're under dry conditions, the best thing you can do is early weed control before the weeds harden off. So get there, get the job done. You may have to increase the surfactant a little bit or spray, and this will be harder on the crop. I get it. But man, the loss to weeds in most crops, you have to kill the weeds. So heat of the day, the waxy cuticle on the weed and on the crop, unfortunately, but on the weed is more viscous, right? It's like the candle. You heat the candle up with the flame and it melts the wax. Same thing happens on the leaf. So heat of the day, if you can, and again, it is a bit herbicide dependent, but heat of the day, more viscous wax, spray the herbicide, get it into the plant, kill the weed so that the weed isn't there using your moisture and also robbing yield from your plant. Hey, just when I'm on weed control, Paul calling me up and saying, Peter, what is wrong with people? Dang it, how many times do we have to tell them? Thistles you control in the fall, perennial sow thistle, Canada thistle, and yet in the fall, when I say that to my growers, they just say, oh yeah, we've got thistles, we'll kill them in the spring. No. So my amazing brother Paisley and I got together on, I think it was Saturday, I don't know, someday, and Paisley said to me, Pete, like, I can't remember, what was the rest of that saying from Mike Cobra about thistles? And so the saying is, for thistle control, spray in May, they'll be back right away. Spray in June, they'll be back real soon. Spray in July, they will surely die. And so this is the challenge with trying to kill perennial sow thistle, Canada thistle, and annual crops. Warren, by the way, sending me a picture where he had been spraying distinct in the fall, and he ran out. Yeah, you could see it right to the line, and many growers. I was in a summer-seeded hayfield, fall-seeded hayfield actually, where they had heavy chickweed pressure, and they tried to control the chickweed in the spring in the hay crop, but where the chickweed was, because you can't get out there early enough in the spring, the hay crop was, I don't know, a third of what it was where there was no chickweed in that same field. Fall weed control pays in many ways. Just get it done. Dang, I'm running out of time here. On the T3 timing, lots of T3 applications going on. Forward back nozzles, we always talk about that. But don't forget, timing, we all look for the perfect day to apply. Get over that. Pick a good day from a weather perspective, and the heads must be emerged from the boot. I know that Mirvis Ace, the label states growth stage 59 before the head is out of the boot. Dr. Gursaheb Singh, the new pathologist, Ridgetown Campus, University of Guelph, says that he did some research on that. You simply don't get good fusarium control from any product until the heads are emerged. Once the heads are emerged, oh sure, day 2 to day 4 is the perfect window, but it could be windy, it could be rainy. Once the heads are emerged, pick a good day. Use 20 gallons or lots of water. Try to do it when there's not much wind. Wind is one of those things that will negate the value of your forward back nozzles faster than anything. So under 10 kilometers would be really nice. Not very practical, but really nice. The less wind, the better. And remember, 10 to 12 inches off the canopy, because if you're forward back nozzles, the further off the canopy you are, the more that wind is going to take that away. And it's not like spraying straight down where we need 20 inches off the canopy to get 100% overlap. Once you shoot forward and back, now you can be closer to the canopy and still get that 100% overlap. All right, last thing I'm going to address here is on manure uniformity. A caller said, Peter, you're beating us up on manure in terms of uniformity. What about a dribble bar? Would a dribble bar do a better job? And the answer is absolutely. Dribble bars do a better job, typically speaking. But remember, if you're drag lining, man, when you turn, unless you can shut the drag line off as you make that corner, you're going to get way too much somewhere and not nearly enough anywhere or somewhere else. And can we ever see that in the wheat crop? Oh my gosh. I am not going to get to the tissue test thing. Mark Davis, we will have to talk about that next week. I'll send you an email. Meanwhile, that's it. That's all. On behalf of the team here at Real Agriculture, this is Wheat Pete with, once again, a way too long word. Keep the messages, the questions, the feedback coming. I love it. And I will talk to you next week. See you then.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Wheat Pete's Word, brought to you by Syngenta. Stack the deck in your favor in 2025 with the Stacked Cereals lineup of fungicides and herbicides from Syngenta, and earn partner program points on qualifying purchases. Visit syngenta.ca/partner program to calculate your rewards today.